Welcome to the Everton Byline. This is episode number 59. I am Matt Jones. Joining me as ever is Paddy Boyland. We are here to reflect on a 0-0 draw against Aston Villa. Everton still unbeaten at Hill Dickinson Stadium. They've still not conceded a goal there. But a frustrating day, as I'm sure we'll get into. But Paddy, how are you? I mean, I'm looking out the window here in Liverpool today, and I'm glad that the weather was not as inclement on Saturday down by the dock wall as it is today, because to use a local phrase, it is blowing a hoolie out there, isn't
it? It is, but I thought it was on Saturday as well. I know I'm sheltered at the top of the west stand. I've got that nice big hanging roof over me, so I wasn't getting battered by the elements. But there were times during that game when the rain was lashing down as well. So yeah, very much feels for those who aren't in the UK, very much feels like we are already in the middle of autumn, maybe even approaching winter, given how cold it's been.
Yeah, absolutely. One of those days or one of those mornings when you get out of bed and you dread going outside to see like what's been knocked over in front of your house, like someone's bins or just one of those. But yeah, glad we're not playing today. It was a little bit like that at Goodison yesterday. The weather wasn't great for the first women's game there, obviously against Tottenham. But a lot of people, 6,000 wasn't brave the elements to get up there and cheer on the girls. Unfortunately, they get beat 2-0, but it was a great occasion. But yeah, we're going to focus mainly today on that Villa game, as you mentioned, and some of the topics around that. Just a reminder, as ever, we are sponsored by the Bridewell, one of the best pubs to get to in town. If you can brave the elements and get there and get inside and get yourself a nice little
cozy.
Yeah, it's very cozy to sit and listen to the elements roaring outside. So thank you to them for their continued support as ever. If you watch us on YouTube, you can leave us a comment. You can hit like and subscribe. And you get notified whenever our videos or any other videos on the Blue Room channel do go up. If you listen to us on Spotify, you can leave us a rating or a review. And the same goes if you listen on iTunes or on any other platform. So, yeah, Paddy, 0-0. Just one of those where I think Villa were clearly nowhere near their best, had a lot of injuries. Everton played well. They had chances. They carved out a few opportunities. But like as much as we were on top and as much as we were clearly the better side on the day, I never quite got that sensation sitting on the ground like a goal's coming here. It's, we're really pinning them back, creating chance after chance after chance. It kind of felt like Everton's momentum came in fits and starts, and I don't know. And I never really got that feeling that we were going to score. I don't know about you.
No, I mean, I was waiting, to be honest, for the sucker punch at the other end, and it did very nearly come with that Buendia shot. I mean, I'm opposite side of the stadium to that, and from my vantage point, that looked like it was sailing into the top corner via Tarkovsky's knee or foot or whatever it was. That would have been the most Everton of outcomes. I thought they did sustain decent spells of pressure, particularly at the end of the game. It felt like maybe for the last 10, 15 minutes, Villa brought Lindelof on, obviously, as a defensive midfielder. And it seemed to me that the strategy there was simply containment. It was no longer, we think we can nick this as well. And speaking to Unai Emery after the game, he was pretty happy with the point. I think he thought, based on where Villa have been so far this season, the only team in the Football League not to have scored, I think he thought it was a decent point for them, all things considered. A missed opportunity for Everton, and maybe that says something about the progress that's been made early in this season. They did create enough chances to win the game. They should have won the game. Where I agree with you is I never really felt like Everton were going to take one of those chances. And that says something about the finishing quality in the book still. I wrote a match piece on Saturday, published on Monday for The Athletic, where I spoke about how it feels as though Everton have resolved one big burning issue, which is the lack of creativity in the side. They had a good amount of chances on Saturday, created next year, I think of over 2 for the game, which is healthy, but still didn't really look like taking any of those chances. I mean, the one very early doors, 2 minutes in, where Ndiaye races down the right, centres for Betto, and Betto blocks his right-footed shot with his left foot, was kind of symptomatic of the game in that sense, and the lack of quality Everton had from a finishing perspective. And I do think there are going to be at this stage in Everton's journey, there are going to be more days like this to come. They don't have a 20, 25 goal a season striker. They haven't been able to afford that. Instead, they're shopping around that 20, 30 million pound mark, which means that you either get somebody who's going to get you 10 to 12 goals like a Betto, but has some kind of raw elements to their play, or you get a young player on the way up like Barry. And it just feels to me like they've kind of got two players that sort of do a job, but nobody that's going to completely win games up front on their own.
Yeah, and I think it's a game where you said there about when they played against Aston Villa last time, and this is maybe an indication of progress. I think it is that kind of match where you walk out, and I think because we don't really know what certainly I speak for myself. I don't really know what I think is a good season for this team because it's still so new. There's so many players being integrated into it, and kind of walking up the ground on Saturday, it's like, well, yeah, last season like that would have been fine, but like, should this Everton team with the money we've spent and the players we've got be beating a Villa team that are in poor form and have got a few players out injured? So I think we're still kind of weighing up, aren't we? Like where Everton are at. And it kind of brings us on to a piece that was written from the game, but it was in the Guardian over the weekend, and just to sort of use this as a jumping off point for what we're going to talk about on like where Everton are at and what we should be looking for. One section of that said that Everton, unlike most services connecting London and Birmingham to the northwest, their hype train has left the station well before time. They've improved dramatically under Moyes. They are no longer dour to watch, but talk of European football is premature. They've made a decent start to the season, but that is all it is. They probably ought to have won here, but did not. That cancels out the 3 undeserved points they took from Brighton on the opening day at their new waterside residence. Excuse me, like that has sparked a lot of reaction, as you'd imagine, Paddy, on social media. But I mean, is it one of those where we maybe got a little bit carried away? Because I think it's probably a bit harsh to sort of suggest that. I think that there's been enough signs against Brighton and enough against Wolves to suggest that this is a team that can do a lot of damage, can do a lot of creating, as you mentioned there. I think it's probably part of the territory of being a team that have been dour to watch for a long time and have struggled for money, struggled to sign players, and we've got a new stadium. So I kind of get why people are getting excited. I think the large majority of it is pretty justified, to be fair.
I would argue that people should get excited because they've got, like you say, a new stadium to go to and to enjoy. The football so far this season has been a far cry from some of the stuff we've seen over the past 3 or 4 years. And I don't know about you, but I've certainly had much more of a sense of anticipation going to games at the start of this campaign. You kind of know that whatever the result, you're going to see Grealish and Dye, Dewsbury Hall and various others actually taking the game to the opposition and doing some really interesting things. I mean, even in that 0-0 draw, I thought Ilman and Dye was brilliant in that first half with his ball carrying. Grealish did some excellent stuff as well. So I kind of think after the few years Everton have had, and maybe some people would say it's a lot longer than a few years of negativity and dour football, I think we probably should take the wins when they come, and we probably should just be happy that things are a bit more fun. That's not to say, of course, that Everton are definitely going to qualify for Europe this season. I still think, as we've outlined on this show, there are holes in the squad. We've spoken today about the striking options and the fact that there's probably not a reliable finisher on the books. You could say that they're short of fullback cover. With Jake O'Brien playing on the right, you could argue that they're probably one injury away from a really difficult situation at centre-back. Do they have a deep line midfielder? All these questions that we've raised on the podcast before. I can only speak for myself, really, and I don't think that I've been tipping Everton to be European contenders or saying that Everton are going to be in the Champions League within a season or anything like that. What you can do is you can enjoy the start of the season whilst acknowledging, and I think this is the journalistic perspective coming through in me here, Matt, while acknowledging that actually, if you look at the set of fixtures so far, they have been relatively kind to Everton. And that's not to demean them or any of the accomplishments, but They played Wolves, who I think most people would tip to be in and around the relegation battle this season. Brighton was a decent win, but I'm not entirely sure Brighton will be competing at the top of the table this season. That was a home game. Leeds away, newly promoted side. Not a good performance, but sometimes that can happen. And then Aston Villa, which looked a really difficult game on paper when the fixture list was announced, but they've been poor, very poor by their own, chronically poor by their own standards so far this season. So I think what we can say is that Everton have done well versus what's been put in front of them. But what we're waiting for now, with harder games to come, is we're going to actually see what the real aspirations for this side should be, how much they are going to be tested. Just one final point on that that passage from the Guardian article. I would settle for Liverpool to London trains being on time. Never mind, what was it? Leave the station well in advance.
Yeah,
So
you mentioned in there as well, yeah.
Yeah, so I just settle for things running as they should do. Never mind, kind of, and maybe it's the same with Everton. For now, I'm just happy to accept things running as they should do.
Yeah, like the only person I've really heard talking about is getting in Europe, and like I mean, like fans or people have been on podcasts and stuff. Like obviously, people have said it in jest, after we've signed a player or we won one of the games. But
yeah,
one of the persons who's been the most bullish about it is Moyes, and I don't think he's actually come out and explicitly said that we're targeting European football this season, or that's necessarily our aim. So I think there is like a bit of a misconception around that because Everton have signed some players and we've got a new stadium, that all of a sudden like the minimum requirements for this year is to qualify for Europe.
Yeah.
I still think, like I said, I think people are still kind of figuring it out really, because like no one's talking about a relegation battle. No one's talking about us qualifying for Europe really, apart from maybe the odd one or two. So it kind of feels like we're in for a season where if Everton make progress in terms of points, if they make progress in terms of how they look on the eye, we get a few good wins and maybe the odd big scalp at the new ground, and people are enjoying going to the match again without this existential dread that's just been looming over us for so long. Like I feel like people will be content with that for now. Like obviously that wouldn't stay the same forever, as the money comes in from the new stadium and we're trying to improve, but it feels like for now people are relatively happy. Like, I didn't really hear any kind of grumbling coming off the ground on Saturday about the outcome. People were accepting that it was a good performance, just ultimately didn't get over the line on the day. So yeah, interesting one. One of the reasons we didn't get over the line on the day, Paddy, you could say, as you mentioned there, was the profligate finishing. Obviously Michael Keane missed a couple of chances. Surprise, maybe you could say, for him, but he is ultimately a centre half. So obviously a lot of the conversation afterwards has revolved around Betto, and you mentioned the one he had early on there. That's at the other end to me. So just trying to get me perspective, still in the new ground. And I did think, because he kicked that against his own foot there, but wasn't quite sure until seeing it again afterwards. And then obviously it's the one to start the second half, Austin, as well, where it's a great ball in from James Garner, and he just can't get anything on it. And you, Paddy, afterwards were brave enough to ask Moyes about Betto in the press conference, because when he's spoken about him in the past, as much as he said, I don't think the season have very much a love-hate relationship, don't they? Because sometimes you ask Moyes about him and he speaks so glowingly about him. He's like, he's such a great lad. He works so hard. Like, I love him, I think he said in the past. And then other times you ask him about him, going back to that one against Chelsea in particular, and obviously in the States over the summer. And he can be really, really critical of him, can't he? But you ask Moyes about Betto and sort of where we're at with him and Thierry Barry, and obviously he's hinted that they're going to kind of rotate between now and for the next few weeks, certainly. And Moyes said that the reason that Betto played ultimately is just goals. But it was weird with Betto on Saturday, because I actually think that it was a very un-Betto-like performance, in the sense that a lot of his all-round play on that side of the game was quite good, which is not usually the case. And his finishing off chances, which is usually quite good, was pretty poor. So, but just a weird game from him, really. And I think it's going to be kind of fascinating to see how Moyes uses him going forward, given that he seems to be so up and down on him, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair point. Moyes will know, and I think he's spoken about this in press conferences over the last week or so. He knows that they've not got the finished article up front. They've not got a 50, 60 million pound striker. He said that they've not got the budget for that at the moment, which is why they're shopping in that 20 to 30 range. What you have to remember is over the summer, Everton had 7 or 8 other things to do. So the budget, Liam Delap was an opportunity, obviously, at around 30 million for the release clause, but there weren't many others of his caliber available for that, you'd argue. So what he's got, 2 options. He's got Betto, who usually works hard, finishes some of his chances, but is far from the finished product in terms of his all-round game and whatever else. You can flip it on its head for Saturday and say that his hold-up play was better than his finishing, which is rare in Beto's case. I do think he gave Concert and Mings a tough game, and there were times when he stretched play, he beat them to balls, he knocked them over, he did things that you'd want a typical Moyes target man to do. But if he scores that chance a couple of minutes in, with how fragile Villa's confidence is right now, you bet on Everton to go on, probably not only and win the game, but maybe even to win the game comfortably. The other option is Barry, and you're right, Moyes said to me that the reason why Betto's playing right now as opposed to Barry is mainly because Betto's scored a couple of goals so far this season. I think on the whole, he's tended to get himself in better areas than Barry this season in some of those matches. But also, he did again refer to the fact that Barry is a young player without much Premier League experience, still learning the game, still learning about the team and everything else. My argument is that there's probably no obvious number 1 striker for Everton right now, no obvious number 9. But when faced with that decision, particularly against decent opposition, Moyes is more likely than not, 9 times out of 10, going to go with Betto. I'd imagine that the known quantity and whatever else. It's going to be an interesting period because I do think Barry's ceiling is much higher. You see some of the stuff he does, doesn't always come off by any stretch of the imagination. You see some of the stuff he does with his link play, his one-touch play and hold-up play, and you think, if you can just refine some elements here, then you've got somebody for a 22-year-old who does look pretty advanced and pretty full of potential. Beto's much older at 27, obviously, and is less likely, got less scope to improve those areas of his game. But they just look a little bit short of like real out and out kind of match winning Premier League quality there. I'm sure Betto, if he got a full run in the side, he'd score somewhere around 10 goals again this season. Barry probably fewer, 6 or 7. There's going to be a big emphasis, I think, this season, given the options at Everton's disposal. There's going to be a big emphasis on Dewsbury Hall, Grealish, Ndiaye, the lads behind the striker. But I'd also argue Moyes will want more goals, and has said he wants more goals from Grealish, Tarkowski, Keane, Branthwaite, players like that. He's going to want everybody, and he's going to need everyone to chip in at this juncture. I wouldn't mind betting that next summer, for example, we'll be talking about maybe Everton looking at another number 9, because I think he's never been 100% sold on Betto, even if he likes some of what he's done over the last 6 months.
Yeah, I think like that along with right back feel already like the 2 big ones for next summer, and like I suppose as well, yeah, because you've got a Drissa Gay's situation as well. God, we're already named like 3 or 4 positions there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it already feels to me like Betto is. I know you said there, like, does seem like an obvious candidate. I do feel like Betto is probably comfortably ahead at the moment, but again, it was just weird that Barry played that first game against Brighton, did quite well, and has not started either of the Premier League games since. But then again, Betto scored against Wolves, so
he played against Mansfield as well.
Yeah,
and I think what Moyes probably wanted to see is one of those 2 finding the back of the net, and whoever had done it, I think they'd have got into the Wolves game with a much better chance of start. As it happened, Barry kind of squandered a few chances against Mansfield early on. Betto comes on and gets a tap in, laid on a plate really by Harrison Armstrong, and then he's in the side for Wolves, scores again. So I think that's the kind of the crucial timeline so far, probably in Moyes' head, I'd guess.
Yeah, it still feels like it's going to be fluid though, doesn't it? Like at the moment, I'd say Betto is going to start 2 and 3 games, and Barry will start the other one. Like that's kind of where I feel like the balance with it lies. And I'm kind of happy to give Betto the benefit of the doubt to an extent, because like Saturday was not a typical game for him. Like I think if he usually has that kind of game, he would score at least 1 goal, because his finishing tends to be quite reliable and all right. Like I think like the only time in his Everton career I can remember him putting together like the 2 aspects of that, like being a good finisher and doing all the other bits and pieces as well, was probably Palace away, when he played really well that night. And
what about the derby?
Yeah, he did play well that night as well. To be fair,
I thought most of the time he's played Liverpool recently, I think, given their 2 defenders and central defenders, that is, quite a lot to think about, while also scoring some goals. I thought like there were times last season when I wondered whether it was actually just going to click for him. That was one game I thought, and I've said this before on the pod, I thought he did really well. The final game of the season without scoring against Newcastle United really bullied their 3 defenders. When he's on it and things come together, you kind of see the £30 million player in him, just about. But there are games where things don't come off, and the ceiling is much, much lower. Like, it can look quite erratic. I know Moyes has spoken about this before, and others have spoken about it before, that it's kind of hard to predict, because maybe even Betto doesn't always know what he's going to do. I don't know if you saw after the game, quite mealy-mouthed comments from Ezri Konsa about Betto. He was asked about, for some reason, he was asked specifically about Betto, I think. And the quote was something along the lines of, "He's all right. He's a handful at times, but for me, he's just all right." So it's like a little bit kind of like digging out a fellow professional, which I didn't particularly enjoy, obviously. But it does go to show maybe how opposition defenders are viewing him. He's kind of maybe the nuisance who's not always going to threaten the goal, or certainly, if you believe Konsa, that's what he thought of it.
Yeah, like I'm happy to see how it plays out for now. Like I think the thing around centre forwards is that everyone says, don't they, we need a 20-goal a season striker, and they are very, very rare to get. Like certainly in the Premier League, like I can't imagine there would have been many. I'm not got the numbers in front of me, but can't have been many players in the league last year who scored 20+ goals. And if there is one out there, there are going to be a lot of clubs after them, and they will also cost a lot of money as well. And as we've sort of said on this show, there was a lot of situations we had to sort out this summer. We spent around £140 million. I think to go and get a striker now who's like a guaranteed, a guaranteed upgrade on Betto and Barry, you're looking at probably 40 million upwards, aren't you? Given that both of them cost 30 million. Look at Voldemar, that Paddy, who Everton were linked at the start of the summer, and I'm looking at, what did he go for in the end? It was 70, 80 million?
Like 70 million-ish, yeah.
Like the market is crazy, because everybody is desperate for that player. So
yeah, I remember just on that. I remember conversations around the time Everton signed Betto and Chimiti. Obviously, happened at slightly different periods in time, but a lot of the chat then was about how, like, speaking to people in the game, it was about how the pool of strikers, top quality strikers, was actually quite shallow, and what that means is, because of the demand and the lack of supply, that just raises prices, keeps on raising prices, to the point where actually you get £30 million and you're not getting somebody who in the past would have been kind of a key player and an obvious hit in the side. What you're getting is somebody that is a bit hit and miss, actually. I think that's what you have with Betto. That's what you will have with Barry for now, and I think we do need to give him some patience. I'd be interested to hear what you think on this, because it seems like every person I speak to is split on, or most people I speak to are split on Barry, but I actually think he's done pretty well so far and shown some good instincts without really looking like he was ever going to score. So that's kind of where I am with him. And again, goes back to the point that Moyes made. Betto's in the side at the moment for goals as well.
Yeah. When he went through from that pass from role at the weekend,
didn't expect him to
score. Didn't have the conviction, did he? And I think it was Ndiaye who was bursting forward, so he could have passed it to him, which might have been the best option, but just didn't really look like he was in control or confident. And that's a striker that's not scored for the new club, yeah, and it's kind of overthinking everything, isn't it? Because I think if you go back and look at a lot of his goals for Villarreal last season, when he was confident and playing regularly like that was the chance that he sort of loved, and the sort of moments that he was really good in. So tricky one, yeah.
Do you know what I'd say? He looks to me, and Moyes was probably hoping this was going to happen against Mansfield, but he looks to me like somebody who needs to play in that Carabao Cup game against Wolves. Everton get through the derby. He plays some kind of role in that, but probably Betto starts. But then comes in for the Carabao Cup game at Wolves in the midweek, and just something goes for him. He gets his goal by hook or by crook, and then that might just spark a bit more confidence, as you say. I wouldn't particularly back in that situation where Roll played the pass in. I wouldn't particularly back either Barry or Betto. In fact, if I could choose one player to be in that situation, it'd be Ndiaye, and then second choice would probably be Grealish. It wouldn't be the two strikers. I think that says something, and I don't think we should scapegoat, because, like I've said before, I also do believe that it's the job of everybody in the side to chip in with goals. Moyes will want that, and it some of the chances missed were not just Betto on Saturday. It was Emi Martinez having a worldie on his first game back for Villa. It was things not bouncing Everton's way. Grealish having shots saved. Michael Keane. I thought the cross, he was slightly stretching for the one at the end, but that was obviously a huge chance from Grealish's cross. He has another header wonderfully saved by Martinez. So it's not just on Betto, but I think it is a talking point because of the way Saturday went down and what it maybe says. They have two strikers on the senior strikers on the books, and beyond that, it's Ndiaye and Dibbling right now.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the summer will be one. Maybe they'll have a look in January, but I can't imagine it'll be anything other than like a cheap option or someone on loan potentially at this point. But it's that classic thing, isn't it? Like, I think when you sign Thierry Barry, as much as a lot of excitement around him and what he can do, you know, when we spoke on this podcast or speaking to me mates in the pub, whatever, it's always caveated by, well, you know, he's going to take time, he's going to have to adapt and all this. But then it's easy to say that when you're in August and you're playing matches. It's harder to say it now when you're living through. That's, you know, probably a bit harsh, but when you're watching him, you know, maybe not quite hit the ground running, when you watch a little bit of his game that you think are still quite raw. That's where you kind of got to just have a bit of patience with these lads and hope he can develop.
But what that means is there are going to be more games like Saturday, particularly at this juncture in Everton's progression. And like, I think the pertinent comment from Moyes and the one from Moyes and the one I referenced in the match piece again from Villa was that we can't repair all the damage in one window. I think that there's an acceptance at Everton that this is going to be a process across multiple windows. I think potentially up to 2-3 windows, really, because January is not an ideal time to do business. You probably need another summer. And even after the summer, you'll probably come through and go, well, actually, now we've got a whole spate of players out of contract for the next season as well. So just there's a lot to do. There's a big backlog here at Everton. I think we are certainly kind of cognizant of that, and I think most people should be.
Yeah, he's getting on the pitch though, at least, which is maybe more than some of our other players who arrived this summer. Which I think that's the one really interesting thing for me about Saturday, Paddy, because obviously Everton were playing well in the game and they were the better side and they were on top. So maybe with that in mind, Moyes was quite happy to keep it as it was and keep the structure of the team compact in general, because obviously we weren't losing the game, maybe didn't want to kind of throw it away in that sense. But sat on the bench at the weekend, we had McNeil, Alcaraz, Dibbling. Obviously, two of them arrived this summer for a combined £55 million or whatever it was. Obviously, McNeil's been our key attacking player in recent years. Moyes obviously turned to Merlin Roll, didn't he? And to Barry later on as Everton tries to win the game. But to not turn to any of those attacking midfielders, I thought was a bit of a surprise. Like I at least thought Alcaraz might get on for Dewsbury Hall, perhaps. Obviously, Dibbling, a big money signing. Everton were really patient in trying again. There's a lot of excitement about him. So yeah, that was the one surprise for me. Like certainly, I thought Ndiaye, like you said, was brilliant in that first half. But I did think he tired as it went on. Like, I think that would have been the change for me, maybe out of all of them. Or Dewsbury Hall. I think Grealish was really effective right up until the end of the game. Probably actually got better as the game went on, I think.
Yeah.
But of course, Alcaraz or McNeil or Dibblin could have maybe come on for Dewsbury Hall or Njai. And, you know, we spoke before this game about the options we've got and like having those lads on the bench and how much of an upgrade it is. And Moyes decided not to use any of them.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it does. People aren't going to like this, but it brings us back to times when obviously Everton didn't make many changes at all under Sean Dyche. I mean, Moyes has much better options at his disposal here, but it's kind of cut from the same cloth. I don't think he's quite as stubborn about this, as quite as stringent in this regard as Dyche. But I think he does like to keep the team settled wherever possible when he feels like the team is performing well. I'd have left Grealish where he was. You're probably making a fair point on the other two. I thought by his standards, Dewsbury Hall, while he did some good things, had a pretty ineffective game on the whole, so he could have gone much earlier. Moyes was really happy with Grealish and Ndiaye's performances and commented on it afterwards. I thought Ndiaye waned in influence considerably after the break, and I wonder how much of that is down to the fact that he came into the game with a slight injury, had been away. I think he was playing in Congo, in Kinshasa, on the Tuesday night, and then had to come back for a Saturday game in the Premier League, versus the tactical setup, which effectively does, if we're being honest, at times look like a shunt the ball out to Grealish as much as possible and see if he can do something. I think like Ndiaye was less obvious and less of a kind of a hub for Everton in that second half. I think Everton suffered a little bit because of that. But probably what Moyes was thinking, because he was happy with Ndiaye, he was happy with Grealish, he was thinking, we'll keep those two on. And I imagine he's thinking, if something breaks to somebody on the edge of the box or in the box, then Dewsbury Hall's a goal scorer. He's got more history of scoring goals than anybody really, probably on the Everton bench. It would have been good. I mean, maybe it's a sign that some of these players are still getting up to speed and aren't quite trusted. I would hope Dibbling's probably in the same category as Barry for me, in that I target that Wolverhampton Wanderers game in the Carabao a week on Tuesday. Maybe you say the same about Alcaraz and McNeil, but it depends how many changes you want to make. But it would have been nice. There were times when it felt like Everton needed something other than Grealish to occupy Villa's defenders in that second half, and they just didn't have it, unfortunately. So, yeah, I would have probably rolled the dice a little bit. Maybe Moyes feared that they would get caught at the other end.
Was that a expected pun there, Paddy? Rolled the dice.
Rolled the dice. It was not. It was not an expected pun. No.
But yeah, like just before we talk about Merrill, like McNeil, it feels like there's just nothing down for him now, does it? Like, you look at situations in the last few weeks where we have turned to players. Obviously, he started in pre-season, didn't even play quite a few games, and kind of thought Moyes would like him and he'd be around the squad and getting games here and there, certainly off the bench. But there's been matches, hasn't he? I remember the first week of the season against Leeds where we were pushing as well. We didn't have quite as much in reserve. He didn't get on then. He feels like the one at the moment that if an offer came in for him in January, then I imagine the club would be wouldn't be desperate to sell him, but would be well open to offers, because it's not quite certain where he fits in at the moment, is it?
Well, I see a route into the side for Dibbling, and I see a route into the side for Roll, and even Alcaraz at a push, even though I think we've always expected him to be, when reinforcements came in, we've always expected him to be a squad player first and foremost, who maybe played some cup matches. With Dibbling, obviously Everton are likely to lose Ndiaye for AFCON in December and January. So he'll be probably you'd imagine, the most likely option on the right wing. Roll, Moyes has been very positive about early doors. Obviously spoke about him impressing in training, thinks he can play in a number of different positions. And that will be needed with Idrissa at AFCON as well. Alcaraz maybe a beneficiary of that. Again, can play in a few different positions. I look at McNeil and think, where is he going to get in? Because you could probably envisage a scenario if Grealish wasn't there, where Njai went back to the left, Dibbling played on the right, and you've still not got McNeil there. You probably got a scenario even where Alcaraz at the moment might start wide ahead of him, even though that's not Alcaraz's best position. So of all the players on the periphery now for Everton, all the fringe players, he looks like the one most vulnerable, the one most expendable almost, which is mad really when we consider that probably 12 months ago under Sean Dyche, he was maybe Everton's most important attacking player, the one they really struggled without, the main guy to deliver from set pieces. I think Dewsbury Hall and Grealish coming in has obviously really hurt him, and Dewsbury Hall in the sense that it's a left footer in the side who can also take a good set piece, something that Moyes really values. So I don't know about you. I don't see where McNeil fits in anymore to this equation.
It feels like the most likely position for him to play at the moment is emergency left back.
Yeah.
like genuinely, like, you know,
he's not even player over James Garner, is he?
Yeah. But like the only realistic way I can see him get him on the pitch maybe at the moment is like if we're pushing for a goal late on to go ahead. Not to go ahead to level the game, and Moyes just throws him on at left back. Like that feels like the only way he's going to really play at the moment. It's like he got to go against Mansfield, didn't he? But was really quite poor that night, and didn't really offer anything. So yeah, not much down for Dwight of things. But just to finish off, mail and roll, Paddy, as you mentioned there, like every now and then you sign a new player, and in the build up to the game, you get these whispers from people going, "Do you know what? Apparently this lad's going to be really good in training. He's been impressing everybody," and he's very much this summer's version of that, isn't he? Because all I heard last week was apparently he's been doing the business and training, and a few little moments from him here and there where I thought he looked quite raw, and there's a couple of moments in particular where I think the pace of the game really caught him out, and he just thought he had a little bit more time than he had. But loved the battle. Played a great pass through to Barry, as we mentioned there, and probably most importantly of all, looked really, really cool with his headband and low socks.
Well, it's something for you to aspire towards.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Just need to like grow 6'4" and get a bit more muscly, I think, and I'm basically there.
As a fellow headband wearer, I believe he's
walking around town in my Germany shirt and headband, and hopefully people will mistake me for him because
retro Germany shirt. I mean, if somebody does do that, then please let us know, because I'd be intrigued to hear. I thought it was a decent cameo from him. It wasn't perfect. It'll probably take him a while to adapt to the speed, is what coaches always point out. The speed and the athleticism of the Premier League. But I know from the conversations I've had that nobody envisages that being a problem. And actually, despite his frame, nearly 6'4", people often talk more about those attributes and his technique than his physicality. I think actually there was a sense in Germany that despite his size, he was maybe a little bit slender and knocked off the ball at times, a little bit injury prone, as we've discussed on previous podcasts. I thought he did well, and it was nice for Moyes to kind of confirm those whispers on Friday in the press conference where he's talking about role and pressing in training. It gives Everton another option, much needed other option, a different element in midfield. You look at the rest of the midfielders, and particularly the main starting two, Garner and Garner, if you want to call them that. They're quite small, quite diminutive. They get around the pitch and put tackles in, but there's not much height, there's not much stature in there. So he's obviously much more, I'd say Royal's much more of like a Moyes prototype in terms of his build, isn't he? And that will count for him. So I thought it was good. I thought it was a decent cameo. Merlin didn't conjure up any moments of magic, but it was a good solid outing, I think.
Oh, you're better than that, Paddy. Come on.
I'm not better than that. I'm absolutely not better than that. At least not on this show. Maybe when writing for the Athletic, I'll be wary of puns, but not on this show.
Deary me. I sort of feel like if Michalenko's not fit for Saturday, then Garner will play left back, obviously, and he'll play in the derby. I feel like, I feel like for all the stuff Moyes has said, the fact he brought him on at the weekend, I just feel like he'll you'll throw him in.
I asked about Mykolenko. I asked.
Yeah, you got a bit of a curt response, didn't you?
Yeah, there were a couple of funny answers in that press conference. There was one about, I didn't ask about Merlin Roll, but Chris from the Echo did, and basically just asked for general thoughts from Moyes on the performance. And I think the response was something along the lines of, "Well, I only saw him for 20 minutes in the game, so yeah." And then,
wasn't there? He just sort of went. Moyes just kind of went, "Yep." Like that was
yeah,
all he said. Like Chris had to push him for more. Like, you seem like, you seem a bit moody, Moyes. And when I saw the video afterwards, it was only 3 minutes long. I was like,
Yeah, well, it was funny because me and Chris were the only ones. We sat in the front row, and for those that haven't seen it yet, the media room for press conferences at the stadium is kind of on a tilt. It's on a gradient. So we're like sitting in the front row. We were right at the bottom of the steep curve, and that's the point at which you look up to where Moyes is, and it's like a steep climb. You always look at it and think, "Bloody hell, he's right up here." It's bizarre as a setting, and I know some members of the press have already taken to sitting much further back. But relatively speaking, quite not that many local journalists there on Saturday, not many asking questions. So it was just me and Chris. And I think if we'd known, we'd have just kept going with the questions. But yeah, I asked about Mykolenko, and he said it was too soon to know. I still think Mykolenko is really important to the balance of the team because it just gives Grealish somebody potentially a genuine left footer to go on the overlap. Obviously, his end product, Mykolenko, is hit and miss at best in the attacking third. But I think that does help Everton. I mean, I guess we'll have to see. James Garner's done a really good job, I think, stepping in at left back and also in central midfield. But I'd feel much better going into that derby game with James Garner in midfield and Mykolenko at left back than Garner at left back and Irabunum in midfield. I think, like, if I saw the latter team sheet on Saturday, what would it be? Kind of 11-15 when the embargo lifts on the teams coming out. I think I'd feel not particularly optimistic about what was to come.
Just one question finally on the press conference thing. Like, when there's only 2 years in there, do you feel obliged to ask? Because like I know sometimes like you'll go to a press conference and like just sit here and not really necessarily ask a question, but when there's 2 years there, just sort of is it a bit like being in a lift where you feel like you've got to make conversation? Like is it like that where you feel like you've got to just ask a question just to stop it being awkward?
Yeah, it's not quite like that, but I mean, just to clarify, we weren't the only two people in there. There was a lot of people in there, but we were the only two.
Right.
We were the only two to ask questions. I think what you're looking for, I mean, like my main task there in that press conference is to get what I need to help my coverage of the game and of anything else that I want. And you're all kind of working together to just get as much as you can. So, I mean, the big kind of burning issue that I wanted to discuss for my piece was the striker situation. But at the same time, you're thinking ahead to, well, we've not spoken about Mykolenko yet, and what else needs to be asked. I'd expected somebody else to start asking questions about the game, but it didn't materialize, and it probably meant that it was a much shorter press conference than usual. Bit of surprise from, I think, certainly from Everton's press officer and Moyes that it was over so soon. But I'm sure they wouldn't be particularly bothered about that. So it's kind of a bit of an odd one on Saturday and in a number of ways. And now we just wait on that Mykolenko update in particular.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because he has been quite important in games against Liverpool, hasn't he, in the past? But that match feels too far away to be looking at in any great detail yet.
Yeah.
But, we will do it later in the week here on the Blue Room. But that is it from me and Paddy for this week. I haven't asked for any number suggestions or topics or little anecdotes, but I'll put a shout out for them again ahead of next week. Obviously, number 59. And then we're getting into the 60s, so maybe there's some 6-0s or 6-1s or something in there for people. I don't know.
Could be. We get into the 1960s, and Everton are obviously good.
Yeah, so anything to do with early 60s or 59 for next week. And we'll start reading them out again at the end of the shows.
You know what I'm looking forward to?
Go on.
we get into the period, I'm thinking very far ahead here, but when we get to kind of the 90s, the noughties, the 2010s, it's a long way off.
2010s.
Well, as in 100, and we can do it that way, or like the 90s for episode 90 or whatever. Once we get beyond 92, when I was born, maybe through 95, I can actually start contributing on specific years there. Long way away, I know, but saves me having to read a history book before I come on this show.
Yeah, the 2010s, that'll be our grandkids doing the byline at that point, won't it? So yeah, that's it. I look forward to that. I wonder who will get on the 2000th edition special as a guest.
Who'll be Everton manager then? Like,
don't know, Jack Grealish's grandson.
Yeah, I was about to say like Leon Osman's grandson or something. Jack Grealish's grandson will be managing Aston Villa.
I'm sure someone out there, we have got some very, very intelligent and committed listeners. Someone out there will do the math on when that would be and how old that person would have to be. So yeah, look forward to that. If someone does that, I'll read that out at the end of next week's one as well. But yeah, evertonbyline@gmail.com. If you want to get in touch with us. We are sponsored by the Bridewell. You can see the logo there in the bottom left-hand corner. If you watch us on YouTube, do hit the little bell button to subscribe. Do hit like. Do leave us a comment as well. I love reading everyone's comments on the shows. Trying to interact with as many as we can. So do get them in on anything we discussed today. Let us know how you feel about the derby next week, about the the Nets-Ben Reds. Should be an interesting one. And yeah, cheers.
Dig, Matt.
What was that?
Is that a little dig?
Oh yeah, it's derby week, isn't it, mate? So, yeah, and I'm not like directly associated with Liverpool in work anymore, so I feel like I can get away with a few more now as well. So
we can have a sweepstake on when the penalty is awarded.
Oh God, yeah.
I won't go into it.
What minutes of stoppage time is it going to be in? I think we'll start covering that off. But yeah, that's to come next week. We'll reflect on that. Cheers everybody for tuning in as ever. Thanks to everybody who continues to come up to us at the Denby, or obviously we had the tour last Thursday night. We had the preview of that. Probably a few people come up to us then as well. So thank you for all the kind words on that. We'll be back again next week for episode number 59. Cheers for tuning in. Up the toffees.